Hey everyone, and welcome back to Hack and Hustle. I'm Anthony Johnson.
And I'm Brad Rager. And joining us today is Damian Tommasino. Damian is
Hello,
a
gentlemen.
staff solutions engineer at Sneak and founder of Cyber Informants, a community for cybersecurity sales engineering, where he provides a ton of great content for those that are building their career on the technical side of sales. Today, he's with us to share some wisdom as we drill down specifically on LinkedIn and how folks can better use that platform to grow their personal brands and their careers. Damian, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here, man.
Thanks, guys. Happy to be here. I love talking about LinkedIn, so this should be a great session.
Very
Cool.
cool.
This will be awesome. Before we jump into that, though, what is Cyber Informants? What are you guys up to? Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of a one-man band thing going on right now, and it's been going for a couple of years. The reason that I started it is because if you look out in the market, there are so many awesome communities for salespeople, right? Like the AEs, for revenue operators, for GTM leaders. Where's the love for the sales engineers, folks? So I started something and started bringing people along, and it kind of has just grown into this thing where we're all talking about it and just trying to help each other out.
So, but explain. So I think if you work at a vendor, you might know, or maybe if you're new, you don't know. And if you work in a large enterprise, you probably don't know. What is a sales engineer? What is that? What do they do?
Yeah, so I think this is probably the start of a religion war over here. But I think, let me rephrase by saying sales engineering is what the role is traditionally called. I think right now we're in this big push moving over to solutions engineer as the more appropriate term. And even further, in some organizations, you have solution consultant. But the idea behind it is you are the person that works hand in hand with an account executive or an account director, mostly in enterprise deals, and you have the onus for what to consider the technical win, right? Relationship building at the technical level and helping to design solutions for some of the largest organizations in the world.
Cool.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit more about just what's there within Cyber Informants. I know you've got a job board, you've got a bunch of things there. Just for folks that may be listening and interested, what all is part of the platform today?
Sure. So I started building it out in different ecosystem components because everybody's going to look at something or need something different from a resource perspective, depending upon where they are in their career, right? So I have something called Scout, which is about finding your first pre-sales job, right? Breaking in, transitioning from other careers. I have something called the SE Notebook, which is actually a bi-weekly newsletter that I write, which is all straight up notes from the field, things that I experience, how not to do stupid things, right? And avoid them yourself. I have Helix, which is about consulting for a GTM, both in pre-sales and just broader GTM. And then the last piece of it is something called Voyager, which is around how do you really get inside the mind of a buyer? So no vendor BS, no marketing fluff. It's focused on, if you're going to have a conversation with an executive, here are things they care about. If you're talking to an operator, here are things that they care about and how that works throughout the different markets.
Oh man, there are so many things that we can talk about.
There are. There really are.
but it's funny. I mean, I feel like this is kind of like pulling us back to the OG conversation that we originally had, Damian, because we met because you reached out to me on LinkedIn when I was doing a career change and, kind of hit it off. We've had a lot of great discussions since then. And when we talked about you coming on the podcast, I was thinking maybe we'll spin up some advice for sales engineers. Maybe we'll talk early stage, but we kind of quickly started riffing about LinkedIn itself. And you've been doing some interesting things. I think we all bring some experience and perspective on LinkedIn as a platform to the conversation. So we kind of settled in and said, hey, you know what? Why don't we just share some of the things we've seen and kind of take it from a career perspective, right? So that's what we were hoping to drill down on with you. And yeah, that's where we'll go. I mean, maybe a good place to start would be, as you've been building this project, this business, like maybe we just start with like how you're using LinkedIn and some of the things that you do as part of your practice and sort of how you think about it as a tool for cyber informants for you personally, for your career.
Yeah, that's a great starting point. So, me personally, I live on LinkedIn almost all day, every day, including the weekends. Not about content creating, but more of engaging with people in my community and helping out others who are looking to break in as well. Right. So I do spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. I have a fairly large following at this point, although I'm no Anthony Johnson. So I'll get
There
there
is
one
only
day.
one,
There
to
is
be
only
clear.
one. One day, one day. But I do try and post almost every day during the week, sometimes on the weekends as well. I will say that I took it really seriously starting last year. So this will be my second year, like fully committing to almost daily posting on LinkedIn. And I would think the reason that most people kind of just throw up their hands and give up is you're not going to see instant results on this. This is a
Right.
long game thing, right?
Right.
So in my first year, I did, I think, pretty well. I had about 1 million impressions of my content and about 200 posts throughout the year. This year, I'm up to almost 300 posts, and I'm just about to cross the 3 million impressions mark before the end of the year.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Are you using it like what are the outcomes you're seeking with that? Like what are your how do you think about the relationship of building that following and how that benefits you?
Yeah, so LinkedIn I primarily use as a give back mechanism, right? So it's less about, promoting a service or consulting or, even a course at this point, and more about how can I take what I'm learning in my day job, talking to other SEs or even GTM leaders at this point, and give that back to others so they can kind of see, oh, I'm not alone, or, I hate my comp plan. Oh, somebody else has that same problem. Or my AE's an idiot. Oh, somebody else has got that problem, right? Like we all deal with these things, and sometimes it can kind of be hard to talk about it in public without getting whiplash from the company that you work for. So I've made LinkedIn kind of that safe place where we either can have really good conversations in public, or my inbox is always open for those that need to take it private.
Very cool. So Damian, let me frame the question a little bit, maybe a little bit different, right? Like, what if I'm 24, right? And
Yeah.
I'm 24 years old. I'm entering this, the industry. Who wants to hear me talk about, like, what am I supposed to talk about on LinkedIn? Like, how like, what would you say to that person, right? When they're trying to build a following, because you have a career and experience, and people want to hear what you say, but like, how does somebody new or who's not as active or social kind of think about it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would say don't look at others on social media and think you need to be just like them. It is a terrible, terrible trap to fall in. And I'm still guilty of this myself, right? Looking at others and being like, crazy follower counts, lots of, comments on their threads. You don't have to be like that. You're 24 years old, start with something, right? Post once a week, try for twice a week, be consistent about it, and feel yourself out in terms of what do I want to talk about, right? What's resonating with others? And when you kind of come back to that, self-reflection of who cares what I have to say? I'm at 24, right? I don't have a big career. Well, the person who's 23 or 22 who's coming right behind you, because
Yeah.
you may not have a ton of experience yet, but you're 12 months ahead of where they are, right? And there is things you can pass down to them.
I think that's a great point. It's I had a mentor tell me this when I was having a really bad day one time, and he's like, there are a lot of people who would kill to be in your position with your problems right now.
Yeah.
Like, we can always learn from somebody, and somebody
Yes.
can always learn from us. And I think that's what you just highlighted, right? Being able to say, hey, we can all give back to somebody in some way, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, 100%. I'll give you a perfect example too. When I was 24 years old, I was just starting to build up a lot of my technical certifications, especially like the Red Hat when it was very popular back in the day. And the way you learn Red Hat, if you didn't have the $800 to shell out for the course, was you went into one of the forums and you kind of swapped notes with other people on the forums. And I started just writing this in a blog as I learned, mostly for my own benefit, but it actually grew so much that I ended up getting contacted by a publisher, and I actually wrote one of the versions of the Red Hat certification guide at 24 years old, right?
That is awesome.
And simply because I was just sharing what I was trying to learn, and others thought it was important too because they were trying to do the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, we've been talking about building kind of your personal brand and your presence on LinkedIn, and let's drill down on that for a bit. There are other things that I want to get to when we think about LinkedIn and careers and things like that. But on that personal brand piece, I mean, Anthony, you've got like 25,000 LinkedIn followers on our league tables among the three of us. You're a clear number one, and I'm a clear number three, I think. So I'd like to hear from you, like, what have you done, like, in what has it meant to you, and what's been your kind of philosophy and approach?
Yeah. So one, there is like this whole aspect of analytics and when you post, and you can do all that, right? But I think Damian's absolutely right. Like, you have to be consistent, but two, I think authenticity really comes across. And what I will tell you is that the classic marketing ideas, if it's viral, like that's all true. But if you're raw and you're like, hey, I bombed out on some of my most active posts, like threads, comments are, hey, here's how I totally bombed this thing. And maybe it's because people are like, rooting for the bad guy or whatever, but they're like, oh my gosh, like, but there's a lot of sympathy, like, oh my gosh, I did that too, or I did something similar, right? And I think that authenticity, that being exposed, matters a lot. The other thing I would say, and this is, LinkedIn changes its algorithm like every year. And this year, and what I envision going into next year, is it's not necessarily about views that drive your content viral, but actual comments. So if you want your post to go nuts, you literally are commenting back to almost every single person, right? And like a thoughtful comment, not like "Danke," like that's not going to work.
Yes,
That would be
100%.
Yes. Yeah, totally. I think is I've taken classes on this stuff. I've like fallen down some rabbit holes on like how you do this, and I think that whole commenting piece is an interesting and important one too. And it's engaging in a dialogue, not just on your stuff too, but on other people's things, and understanding. And part of it goes back to, you should probably have some strategy, right? As to generally, like, who do you want to be talking to? What do you want to be talking about? Like, if somebody's going to follow you, and man, I see. But what are you trying to achieve, right? Because then it's like, well, then I know who to kind of engage with and build relationships with. But I want to hear what you want to say there, AJ.
I have to react to that one. So I think the problem with a lot of people engaging on social media is that they wait until they have a perfect strategy.
That's true.
And I think that with LinkedIn, with TikTok, with whatever, right? But LinkedIn, like Damian said, he's like, I'm pretty sure you probably didn't have 200 posts laid out. You're like, I'm gonna sit down for an hour on Wednesday and I'm gonna do this.
Yep.
And you talk about whatever, right? And so I think if you drive, like you said, the consistency piece, you eventually figure the strategy out. Because I think people hesitate. They delay their execution so long that they just kind of give up. What do you think, Damian?
Yeah, 100%. So I will tell you, last year when I was committing to doing this, full time and really focusing on this, I didn't want to get hung up on the strategy. So the quickest way to do this is I took just a pen and a piece of paper. I wrote out 5 themes that I thought I could talk on semi-authoritatively, right? And each day I would pick just one of those themes and I would write whatever was on my mind from one of those themes. And over time, you start to see like, all right, this is really resonating. No one cares about this topic, right? And you shift your themes. Now that I'm in year 2 of doing this, now I went into it with a strategy. And actually, Anthony, I did write out like 90 days worth of posts at the beginning of the year. Every quarter I write it ahead of time. But it's because I've spent the last 18 months refining this based on doing instead of thinking.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. There is an iterative thing here too, because you don't know what people are going to engage with. You don't know if people are going to comment on your stuff, right? Like you don't know. But I think the thing I'd encourage is like, don't just think about it as your things. Think about it as there's this community of people that are talking, and you want to be part of that community, right? And it's not just off of your own stuff.
Yes. It's a great place to also just really peer into the mind of other people, right? You guys both know, like in sales, we talk about this all the time. Know your buyer, understand their pain, and like how many salespeople actually spend the time to reach out to someone on LinkedIn, not to sell them something, but like, hey, tell me about your job. Like, what are the challenges you run into day in and day out? I would imagine it's very few, right? But that's the best way to get into the mind of your buyers.
100%. And I think let's dwell on this for a second, because we've talked about like building your following count and, having a personal brand on LinkedIn. But as you think about use cases for building your career, I mean, having a personal brand, I think that opens options. It helps you maybe become recognized. You can kind of be a person that people go to. It creates opportunities, I think, for you and opens doors. But there's other things there on LinkedIn, right? And one of them is having conversations with people and meeting people and kind of building your network and your connections. Damian, what have you reached out to me, right? And that's how, our relationship started, right? Like maybe talk a little bit about that and kind of that piece about connecting with folks and building the network.
Yeah, so I'm a big writer. I just prefer to write versus video. So everybody's got to do what they're comfortable with. But I think one strategy that's worked really well for me is picking a topical area, usually based on where I'm working at the time or who I'm employed with at the time, and just writing on it. Not about the product, not about the solution I'm selling, but the problem area. And then I use those pieces that I've written as a means to connect with my target audience and the folks I want to sell to, right? So I currently work for an application security company, right? I want to talk to people in the DevOps role, the security role, the compliance role, engineering managers. Those are people I want to talk to. But instead of reaching out like, hey, take a demo with me, I rather say, look, I wrote this piece on this problem, right? In cloning repos and doing security scans. What's your perspective, right? Is this reality of what you see day in and day out? And when there's no real ask other than for their opinion to get insights, people tend to be a lot more receptive about that.
100%.
Yeah, people love talking about themselves, right? Like we all do, right? Like we all, like we're all better. We're better looking than the average. We're all smarter than average, right? Like, and it's really funny when you kind of think about that, right? Like, I think that what you said, and I would just frame it just almost a little bit differently. It's you're talking about topical, timely things that are personal to you or that matter to you, that you might have some energy and emotion, right? And I think it's important to have that energy and emotion, and in like maybe not too much emotion, right? Like let's be civil, but like something you're actually passionate about, because on platforms like LinkedIn, where it is a lot of written, people can tell if you don't care about that topic, right? Like, like that's really like, and so I'm going to steal a question that Brad I know was lined up then, which is AI. Do you use AI? Do you think it has a place in it? Is it too depersonalized, right? Because it kind of goes against, like, how much can you do? Like, can you do a lot? Can you do a little? Do you pre-write? You know what I mean? What do you think about people using AI in this?
So from my personal stance, I don't use AI at all when it comes to LinkedIn. It is all just me, my thoughts, things that I'm framing. The only place that I see AI having really good potential is when I'm writing a post and I want to frame it with a certain emotion, right? Running it through something like a Grammarly. What's the tone of this? Does it come off in a specific way based on the words that I chose? That I find super helpful. I've also seen a lot of folks who are using things like ChatGPT, not to write the actual post, but more of like, hey, I want to talk about topic X. Give me just some bullet points on topic X, more to get the creative juices flowing type of thing, not to actually write the post. I think
what about for
AI
images?
I mean, it can, it sometimes helps, but like, does the image really speak to any benefit in the post other than trying to please the algorithm? Most of the time, not.
But there is that algorithm piece to it, and images help. At least currently, I think that's the current thing. Is that they help. Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think it's good. It can be good for prompting a variety of subtopics, maybe to decompose something. I think you have to be a pretty damn good prompt engineer to actually get it to write in a way that sounds like that actually somebody would read and say that's a pretty insightful and interesting take, right? I think that a lot of the plain vanilla prompting that you would do, it comes off as just so AI and so fake, and so I know that it's possible, but most people, including myself, do not have the prompt engineering skills to like dial in that tone piece to get it right. I think it also won't generate original insights for you in a compelling way, right? And I think it's part of that, like you said, Anthony, authenticity, right? Like it's really hard to get something that feels authentic, I think, out of AI, right?
Yeah, 100%. And anyone who reads any of my content knows that I love to talk about my kids, like lessons that I've learned from my kids, lessons I try to teach my kids, although they don't listen that great. So, it's the authenticity for me is how weaving that into lessons that I'm learning from them that honestly could apply to having conversation with the other adults. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the authenticity you cannot get out of AI. Right. It's not there.
I'll tell you one piece where I do feel there is some value here in automation, and I'm generally not an automation fan, automated emails, automated things like that. But there are products out there that allow you to automate your outreach to folks to expand your network and kind of max out on the LinkedIn kind of connection requests. And I think that you can point that at a target market and things like that, and kind of expand your sphere of connections on an outgoing basis. I found that to be a pretty smart tactic. And it's a way of kind of continuing to build that follower account that isn't all just inbound. You
just got to be real careful that you don't end up in LinkedIn jail for it, because I
don't want to be there.
I have seen several people using something similar to what you're describing and have very quickly landed in LinkedIn jail.
Yeah, not a good place.
It is an interesting thing, right? Because social media platforms and anything dealing with your career, when it comes to your personal brand, let me say it this way: when it comes to your personal brand, we're in control of that. Right, like we try to be, right.
Yes.
Don't drink too much. Don't stand and dance on the tables at the bar. Be respectful. You'll be cool. But with LinkedIn, it's always this fear, right? Like you could build this up, and then shadow banned. You said something that the algo doesn't like, or and all, or your account goes away, right? Which the reason why I bring that up is because I still think it's super important for people to turn even those LinkedIn connections into real physical connections. Hey, 100%. I'm going to be here. Could we meet up? Right. Have you met anybody cool purely over LinkedIn that you're like, wow, I can't believe I met that person. It was totally random. Like in the last year and a half, anyone jump out?
There's a couple of people actually. So one of the DM groups that I'm in is a bunch of solutions engineering leaders who have been, doing this a long time. And I end up bumping into them all over the US at events, and it's just unexpectedly. And it's I was talking to someone in DM, and we're having this great conversation. I go to a conference the next day, and I'm like, oh, we were just talking yesterday. I didn't know you were going to be here. That's cool. Yeah, I mean, Anthony, you know how small cyber is, so you will run into a lot of people you end up engaging with.
100%. There have been so many people I've struck up some conversation, or a LinkedIn conversation turns into a Zoom. You chat about whatever it is, and and then you've established that connection, and then you see them at a conference, and it's like, hey, let's get a beer.
I mean, Brad, I'm not sure if we got introduced or if we got connected. If it was a LinkedIn,
we got introduced. Yeah.
Okay, so.
Yeah.
But that probably was a LinkedIn thing. It is it is a really, really crazy thing. And I think that's one thing that I think maybe the older generation is a little bit better about, which is, hey, can we meet in person? Hey, who else should I know? Introduce me to so-and-so, please, right? And I think that it's an important skill for sales engineers, salespeople, marketing people to ask and meet them in person. Like, yes, it's easier to stay at home and Zoom, but like, get up and grab a cup of coffee, right? Like,
totally. I mean, I think if you lean into it with a sense of, I want to contribute something that is valuable to other people, and challenge yourself to get out there and do it consistently, and be open to the connections that you find, and you do so in an authentic way. I think the whole thing is you're going to meet awesome people, and it's going to open doors. And that's one of the points that I personally wanted to make in talking about this is, I think a lot of people will hop into LinkedIn when they are thinking about leaving their job, right?
Yes.
And the whole point about building the personal brand is that multiplies your number of connections and opportunities, that when your head is in that zone, the number of folks that can help you out, that they have their connections, that's when all of this work, it can pay off in many ways. It can pay off in sales. It can pay off just in friendships. But from a career perspective and a jobs perspective, like, that's not something you can spin up in 2 or 3 months, right?
Yeah.
It really helps to have it there.
Yes. I get yelled at every time I say this, but I'll say it again. The best time to get on LinkedIn and post and network and start building a community is 6 months before you want to leave your job.
Yeah.
Right. It's not 2 weeks before. It's not a day. Maybe you get terminated due to a downsizing that's going on. It's 6 months before. And the longer you put that off, I think the bigger the risk becomes in you than being in a scramble of trying to find something new.
100%. 100%. All right. Well, this feels like a good place to call it and do our roundup. Do you have anything else, Anthony?
No, I'm just chuckling because we had all these other questions and topics that we were like, oh, we can go here and here and here. And like, I'm like, man, we could probably like just put together a bullet list of like for 30 more minutes. You know what I mean?
Like, totally. Well, why don't you start us off, Anthony? What's your kind of main takeaway that you want to reinforce?
I think it's the premise of what Damian did, right? Like, he jump in with some consistency and then put together the plan, but like, just get in the water, right? And I think that will pay dividends, and you're farming, you're not hunting on LinkedIn, you're farming.
Absolutely. Damian, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, just to echo some of the same things that we've already said, right, is start today, don't put it off, right? Kind of go into it with just a pen and a paper, don't overthink it. And this is the long game, folks, right? It's not going to happen overnight. It takes a lot of time. I will say one of my favorite stats to throw at people is about 65 to 70% of the meetings I go into these days, the other person on the other side of the table knows who I am from my LinkedIn content. That didn't happen overnight. It took 2 years to get to that place, right?
Yeah.
But that's the ultimate goal, is to play that long game.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then I think I think if you do it in a way that is genuinely other oriented and isn't transactional, it's not like hey, this is what I want from you, but generally, how can I help? And I think it's one of those things, like, the more you put out, the more you get back. And you don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but you got to put it out there to get it back. Right. That's kind of, I think, the philosophy. So
I'm going to throw one more thing at you real quick. For those who are in the pre-sales or solutions engineering profession, right? I think they kind of get hung up on, where do I start? Go back and think about how much you as an individual write in a given month. POC docs, emails, Slack messages, product notes, product feedback notes. I mean, you probably could easily write 7,000 to 10,000 words in a month just doing your job. We're asking you to put, 120 of those in a social media platform twice a week.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Damian, thank you for joining us. Really awesome to have you on the show. Anthony, as always, great spending time with you guys. That is a wrap for today. And we will see everyone back here in a couple of weeks for another episode of Hack and Hustle. Thank you all.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.